Yes, Olmec skylifters. Yo, we shift the galactic frame of the sky to line up the planets with the Most High. From 6000 BC to 2012 AD, here we see the Milky Way converge in position. The solar gods emerge from the solstice meridian. You can see the reptilians trying to figure out how to stop Nibiru, cause they all know that they all through. When it do, eternity of matters, Merkabah. The long countdown dated back to Isabel, the Olmec skylifters showing you the pistol store straight from the head and the mouth of a jaguar. The Big Dipper region, they call it the polar, will merge with the head of a solar black god from the center of the Milky Way. The dawn of a new day like bird rules today. We don't play, we a cosmic civilization resurrected to rebirth our own nation. Just in time for the 13 moons, man, we serious just like June the 11th of the year 2000. So pump your fists in the air and start wildin'. Pump your fists, here come the Olmec skylifter. Pump your fists, we beat the Olmec skylifter. Stellar 22 is a bar, here we are. God in the flesh like Rock and Malar. The return of the Olmecs, 6-pointer star. Like an insult, now y'all know who we are.
What if the original blueprint for planetary harmony is not lost, but alive, breathing, and walking among us? What if the real systems change we seek begins with recognizing the people whose bloodlines have been rooted in this land since before colonization? And what if synchronicity is not coincidence, but confirmation, guiding us to reclaim what was never truly forgotten? Welcome to Systems Change, Synchronicity, and the Mother Culture.
With the Galactic Spin podcast and expand your view.
In Lakesh, and greetings to everyone tuning in from around the world in this now moment and in any future moment. Welcome to the Galactic Spin podcast. My name is Mikuak Rai, Kin 126. It's an honor to be here with you this evening for this 27th episode of this ceremonial endeavor. I'm joined, as always, by my brother, my perfect analog partner, my perfect like-minded partner, Ruben Llináa, Kin 113. In Lakesh, brother Ruben.
Hola, Kin. In Lakesh to everyone tuning in to this second half of the Galactic Spin, this 52-episode journey that we are transiting towards the golden intersection of time. It's such an honor to share this space with you, brother, and very excited about tonight's episode. And very excited also about what we are going to learn tonight, reconnecting with our ancient roots, our ancient memory, and we have a very special guest to really guide us through that journey. So very honored to be here.
It definitely promises to be a revealing and I think remarkable exploration. I'm super grateful to be able to spiral back into an intersection with this particular brother myself. And we'll also be joined by our elder and dear brother, Baba Wanik Shabazz, along with our special guest, King Etznab Shaquan El Ray. the one and only Olmec Skylifters, as we heard there at the beginning in the intro. That's one of his rap god songs. He's a rapper and has long been a producer, extraordinary creative artist, and a powerful voice. And he's evolved in so many other facets as well. So it's just a real testimony to decades worth of his presence on the planet, uniquely as an individual, and then also how that really connects and affects the connected grid, we could say.
Yes, I was definitely enjoying the lyrics of that song that was playing before while we were waiting in the room, and such an amazing expression of lyrics.
Absolutely. Incredible. So, I think without further ado, as we organically usually navigate this journey, this creative journey, as I was saying, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into the Earth's pulse and navigate this incredible 27th episode together in synchrony and grace and deep gratitude for having come this far.
Yes.
Certainly 27 episodes is no small feat. So we're grateful to be here in this now moment. Special shout out to those who are tuning in the live chat as well. We give thanks for your presence. And I think you will find a wonderful reason to interact with tonight's guest and certainly present any questions or insights you have along the way. And with that, we're going to go ahead and go in. So feel free to go ahead and drop in with us, Ruben.
Yes, of course. This is basically something that just got our attention tonight because this is a very recent discovery, and we are just recording it here because we want to share the fact that this rare discovery of two double star spiral system that is about to collapse. When we say it's about to collapse, they are speaking about 123 billion years to happen. But of course, since we are living in the now moment, we want to highlight it because it reminds us of something that we have been really discovering in the past couple of weeks regarding the work of Dan Winter and the implosive charge of nature in terms of when two fields or two waves that are functioning under the golden ratio proportion or the golden proportion, they create like a moment of deep release of energy. And this is something when these two stars are going to collapse into a type 1 supernova, which is one of the two possible options. One is the nuclear supernova, thermonuclear, when it implodes on its center. But this one is when two stars, one star starts to attract another in a spiral fashion until one absorbs the other or collapses the other. And this is going to be such a incredible light show when it happens, because it's part of how nature works. So it is a reminder of how the energy in the universe works, and how we can really connect with that in a way that we see the examples in nature of these stars collapsing and creating really amazing effects, so that we can actually perceive as how really nature works.
What's the timing of this particular event? Do we know?
Well, yeah, it's supposed to happen in the future, but really we are speaking about 123 billion years, light years. But since everything is happening really in the now time, well, at the speed of light, these numbers really lose their meaning. So what we are speaking here is really an example of how nature works.
And so, again, as you were mentioning, this correlates with Dan Winter's work, which I'm definitely looking forward to having him on in the near future as well to explore that more deeply, because in looking into that myself the past several days, it's remarkable as we've been preparing for the golden intersection of timelines, recognizing that the same behaviors he's describing theoretically in his work is really, if we identify what's happening with this golden intersection of timelines, it is as though we're being drawn into the center, which is that basic phase shift, or conjugate shift, right? Or phase conjugation, basically, I think is the terminology he uses for it. It also relates, I think, very closely to what Jose Arguelles describes as the fractal time compression. Because as you're saying, everything, no matter how extended it is, seemingly across the span of time, everything is tending to the center. It's folding in on itself. And so as we're observing this, it's interesting these things are becoming conscious now through a scientific lens as we look at what's being revealed over the past 7 days, for example, even if it's for a marker in the future, because as you said, everything really is happening right now. And that's one of the remarkable things, I think, also about the lens of the synchronic order and fractal time, is it gives you the ability to see that through line or that thread across multiple timelines. And everything appears to be spiraling into the center. And I think that's also why we've been emphasizing in this ceremony is that the action of this ceremony is really drawing us into our respective centers, because this is really, I feel, to be anchored and observed really within the center of our own hearts and our own beings, our presence, as much as anything external at this particular time. Not to say that the external doesn't serve its purpose. Surely it does, though it is absolutely an expression inside out. And, this is a really important time for that. So with that said, let's go ahead and tap in. We're going to sink in and tune up as that is very important. So we can really identify where we are in the navigation of time.
Yes, please, let's go.
And here we find ourselves navigating through NS-137, and this is characterized as the blue rhythmic storm year, coded by 19, the 19th kin out of 260. And that 19 is showing up again and again and again. It's beautiful to see and witness how it's continuing to show up in the numbers. I think even in the current wave spell, or it's just been showing up in a variety of ways lately. And so we want to observe that we've just now entered a new moon, the planetary moon of manifestation. And Ruben, if you'd love to offer some remarks here, that'd be great.
Yes, we are in the first heptad, or the first week of 7 days of this planetary moon. This is the what we are seeing here is the schematics of how time travels in a spiral fashion. So what we see here, each unit is one moon of the 13 moon year, each moon comprised by 4 weeks of 7 days each. So we are in the red week or the red heptad of this planetary moon. And as we can see on the next slide, this fractal structure, which is called a wave spell, is also one of the 13 cycles, the 20 cycles of the 1320 matrix. And in this case, this entire year of the blue rhythmic storm represents the 13 unit cycle of the human. So the entire theme for this year is our free will, our influence, and our wisdom. How can we develop and really create the best out of our humanity through the application of the codes of the synchronic order and through the embodiment of these codes, because it's not just, this is not information that we are supposed to know, but that we are supposed to live and embody. So this entire moon, as we can see highlighted here in green, corresponds to the red planetary dragon, Kin 101. And this entire moon has a theme, of course, like every moon, like every day on the wave spell. In this case, the question that we are asking ourselves during this entire cycle of 28 days is, how do I or how do we perfect what we do? Because the theme or the energy of the tone of manifestation is to perfect and produce that manifestation. How can we really manifest? So we are moving from the moon, the solar moon of intention, to this planetary moon of manifestation, to manifest everything that we have been harvesting during the entire year. And the dragon is the energy of birth, nurturing, and being. So it's an invitation really to be reborn, to manifest everything that we have been really covering during the last 4 episodes, last 4 weeks during the solar moon of intention, to manifest those intentions and to use all the amazing synchronicities and portals that we went through during the last moon, so that we can put that energy into the manifestation of and the birth of the type of human that we want to become and evolve into. So this moon will go in, as we can see the next slide, it started 4 days ago on Kin 11, the spectral tone of the last wave spell of the dragon. So we have, as we mentioned, we have the energy of the dragon of birth and nurturing really in the background during at the beginning of this entire moon. And this week or this heptad also corresponds to a kin, according to the fractal count of 260 weeks. So again, for those people who are new to this, we have 260 days. Then we have also the ability to perceive those 260 units of the Solkin as 260 weeks or heptads, or 260 moons, because time is fractal. So within that count of 260 weeks, which really represents a cycle of 5 years of 52 weeks each, this entire moon also corresponds, this entire week also is coded by the energy of the red spectral dragon. So it's a triple dragon energy, so it's really a time to go back to the origin, back to the source, back to the mother. And this is what we are going to speak tonight. So we are on the 4th day of this planetary moon, and next episode is going to be your birthday. So this is also a perfect rebirth moment for you, brother, and such a beautiful opportunity to honor that and to prepare for that rebirth that is happening with that energy of the dragon in the background. And as we can see, within the 260-day cycle, in the next slide, we are today starting a new cycle of 13 days. Is the 13-day cycle of the white wizard. And this cycle is coming also loaded with important milestones and prophetic events that we have been tracking for many years already. And this is the second cycle of a 52-day cycle known as the Red Castle. This is a cycle of 4 wave spell of 13 days each. We're in the second wave spell. Let's remember that we have the red color of initiation, the white refines, the blue transforms, and the yellow ripens. So this is a cycle of the white wizard is a cycle for really refining everything that we already started within the last 13 days. And as we can see in the next slide, this entire cycle is coded by important prophetic milestones or events. One being the fact that King Pakal, and as I mentioned his name, there is a thunder here, so that sounds like a confirmation that this is a powerful cycle because it connects back to that root of, or the origin of these codes, which is the legacy of the ancient Mayan king and sage Pakal Botan. On a day like today,
All right, everybody. Technical difficulties here. I know the last day of Mercury in retrograde is something like today or yesterday, so we're in that field right now. Ruben is going to join us here again momentarily. I guess if we want to just pick up, we were in the process of kind of wrapping up the orientation and sync in, tune in, sync up. So what we'll do is naturally move about. I think where he's located currently in Mexico is also experiencing some power outages. So that may be what's happening currently. So I tell you what I'm going to do is, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring my dear brother, King Etznab, Shaquan El Ray, to the stage without further ado, because time is precious, and this brother has been doing tremendous transformative work on the planet, and it's time to acknowledge that and celebrate that. King Etznab in Lakesh.
In Lakesh.
Yes. Great to hear you, my brother, and thanks for rolling with us with these Olmec punches.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to pass up any pun that I can, find in the flow. I'm trying to do as Brother Wanik does so eloquently, and hopefully he's able to join us as well. I think some technical things are also hampering his ability to connect, though it's important that you and I are able to connect. And I've been looking forward to this episode for the past several heptads or weeks, but truly on another level, I've been looking forward to this for decades.
Okay.
Really given the fact that you are who you are relative to the stream of life, consciousness, initiation, apprenticeship, mastery, all the things that you have navigated to bring you to where things are currently. I'm really just so grateful for a chance to get into that together with you directly. And maybe we can begin, I guess, at the beginning relative to, say, let's go back to maybe the 90s, if we want to start there. I don't know. Does that feel good to you?
Yeah, that's fine. The 90s is fine.
Okay. So paint the picture in terms of where you were born, where you were living at the time, some of your early story, and then how that catalyzed into really the path that you're still perfecting to this day, that you're completing and fulfilling.
Okay. So, well, obviously, if we go back to where I was born, I was born in Seminole County, Georgia. Okay. And I started on a journey, at a very young age with my grandfather. All throughout school, from primary school on, he would always tell us that we were Black Seminoles. So, and I started to dig in that, in school. I was, okay, well, we're Black Seminoles. Let me dig into the history of the Seminoles. Then I started to dig into it, and into Florida, into Tallahassee, and then into Orlando, because I had family in Georgia and I had family in Orlando and Tallahassee, Florida. So I began there, and it led me to some real interesting things. My father, his sister, lived in Orlando, and I used to go to Orlando, Florida every summer. When I was young, and I used to live right up the street from Disney World. We did a lot of different things, and I would see a lot of things in the areas of Kissimmee, Universal Studios, and I started digging further and further, and it was leading me to different places. From Florida. Then from Florida, it led me into Oklahoma. So every place that had Seminole, I would, and they say county, when they put the word county, they said that means that it was a nation there. So Seminole County, Georgia, it was a nation. Seminole County, Florida, and then it led to Seminole County, Oklahoma. Now, once I got to the Seminole County, Oklahoma part of the family, it was interesting things from the 1800s, from all of the different wars, and we came across something called the Dawes Road Commission. Okay, and we had county again in Oklahoma. Okay, now it was different wars. It was wars in Florida, wars in Georgia, and it was wars obviously in Oklahoma, from my family line specifically. But on record, it was showing that the people that were in my family, they were never conquered, right? They were never defeated. they won the wars, and then either they would retreat and go to a different location, but they would never conquer, they never surrendered. And then when they was in Oklahoma, they was dealing with the Dawes Road Commission, and a lot of the people in that area, a lot of land was being taken, and then they eventually migrated from there into Mexico. Okay, now when I started to trace all of the things in that Seminole line, I started to see the creeks in there, and then it took me back to the Yamasee natives, the Yamasee Indians, because basically they were like the same people. They just took on different names in different territories when it was different events that were occurring. So they were the same people. Like Seminole just mean runaways, but those were later names, but they were originally Yamasee natives. Okay, and then the Yamasee natives tied back into the Washita, and from the Washita back into the Nuwbun Olmec people. So I trace all of that, over the years. And obviously, when we get into the 90s, in my first year in college in 1996, that's when I started going to Tamaray with Dr. Malachi Z. York, and he started to confirm even more with his research. So his research validated and confirmed the research that I had already did, but he expounded upon the research with his own lineage and family. And then I found out that his family tied into my family in Oklahoma through his great great aunt, Diane Fletcher. Diane Fletcher, who was a Seminole woman, his great great aunt that started the Black Indian schools in Oklahoma, and all of the native tribes was a part of this Black lineage and Black bloodline, because all of those tribes in those areas, according to the records, were all Black tribes. People did not know that the Seminoles, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, what they call the 5 civilized tribes, these was all Black tribes. And they had Black chiefs who were basically telling the Red Indian chiefs what to do in war, on the Trail of Tears, because that Trail of Tears took place from Georgia, Florida, and back into Oklahoma. So they were on the Trail of Tears, but these were Black leaders, and they was telling everybody how to win war, how to be great, and how to defeat, a lot of the colonizers. The same thing took place in the year 1715 with the Yamasee tribe in the Carolinas, because they said that they wiped out like 70% of the colonizers in South Carolina. The Yamasee tribe did, and they only had like 30% of the colonizers left after that war. So it was continuous wars that were taking place. But in 1996, is when it really started to really make a lot more sense through what Atum Ray, Dr. Malachi Z. York was laying down at the time. In 97, he released a scroll called Let's Set the Record Straight. And then he had the Nuwbun Olmecs, all of that in there. And then I started to delve heavier in on Tamaray to that part, and I started to trace the lineage and genealogical reports, and it just goes on from there.
I want to acknowledge today's kin, in fact, is none other than the kin of Atum Ray,
Yes,
Dr. Malachi Z. York. And I think it's a beautiful synchronicity that we're having this conversation and bringing this into the current context of our times. I also have my own experience being initiated into Nuwbun and the Holy Tabernacle Ministries back in the early 90s in Washington, D.C., and part of the community there, and the tabernacle that we had at Howard University's campus that was very vibrant for a few years, around 94, 95, 96, in that time. And I had the honor and privilege to go to Savior's Day, his birthday celebration down at the land, Tamaray, as you mentioned, and that was unlike anything, I feel like where I am today is because of those experiences completely,
Yes,
in every way, really. And I mean, it was very informative, instructive, and all the various things. So we continue to fulfill, really, as you were saying, those threads that you and Atum Ray were weaving at that time, very, very significant to where we find ourselves today. And at this turn in particular, because as we'll get into, there is a wave of indigenous leadership, that's emerging, that's always been here, and it's also being, in a way, summoned. We're getting a call to really provide our support to different communities that we do work with relative to this knowledge and the ancient threads and communities connected to this information in the communities of Palenque, for example, in Mexico, and like you as well, with the research you've done, with that connection to the ancestors and to purpose for now. This is the most important time. So what you're doing, that's why today's episode really does look through a lens of systems change, synchronicity, and the mother culture. And I want to get into that more because I know you did your genealogical work. When we talk about the Olmec, I know the terminology Olmec is a Nahuatl word, right? It's the Aztec language applied to the people that they regarded as the source of knowledge and culture, and in corollary ways that they intersected with when they arrived to that region, because these people were already there for thousands of years prior to those other instances. Talk a little bit about the timeline for the various groups of people we look at when we talk about Mesoamerica, when we talk about Aztec, Maya, Olmec, Mixtec, Zapotec. We talk, the various groups of people, and then how they're all really preceded by the Nuwbun, so-called Olmec people.
You want to talk about the timeline, like we'll just say ascendancy, like when we talk about Olmec, who were originally known as the Nuwbun, that was their original name, or they call them Olmec, which means rubber, or the rubber people. So you have the Nahuatl, all of the different people who had different dialects in those areas in Central America, but they were, according to the records in the language, the Lagut, the tablets, and Epli Olmec and the cuneiform tablets, according to the records, they had been here, for millions of years, not just thousands of years, even before the continental drift. Okay, but it's going to take some time before people are able to get that. There's one way that you can validate that through one deity that they call a Mayan, because they always call everybody that's Nuwbun or whatever. They always say that they're Mayan, but they're actually Nuwbun Olmec people who predate the Mayans. Okay, so one of them is called Kamazat. Okay, Kamazat is like the original Batman. Now they have on record that the original Batman was here for millions of years, but they're not reporting that. And I say, okay, well, that predates the Maya, because the ascendancy of the Maya was like 500 BC. So everything that predates 500 BC, they obviously could not have been responsible for as Maya. So like, even when they talk about the calendar 3113 BC, there's no way that you could be responsible for a calendar that predates your existence. But that's the thing that we always talk about: time, the predated times, and then what they're giving people credit for. It's like, okay, well, you can't get credit for something, that was established long before you. Even when the pyramids, when they carbon date the pyramids, obviously the pyramids also predate them as well. They just took things over at a certain time period, like around 500 BC. And then you had the other cultures, the Aztecs, and then in South America you had the Incas. But the Olmecs, they were a global culture. They were all over the world, and a lot of people have not put that together yet. They try to make it seem like they was just in one small area in Central America, but they were the mother culture that established a variety of civilizations. They were like the mother culture, and they were the civilizers of civilization, and they was providing the information and knowledge for other cultures to be established.
Right.
That's basically how that works.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because clearly there's been deliberate efforts, I would say, to cover that up, to not actually provide the truth about the archaeological finds that have been found that substantiate these claims, even because I know there are several instances throughout the Americas in the United States 150 years ago, for example, in California, several instances of people digging and developing and building new homes and finding these archaeological discoveries on their grounds, giant bones, like just all sorts of various things, where you can even find primary sources today. There are several YouTube scholars, we might say, or researchers who present some information, really incredible stuff as well, but directing people to some of those primary sources to, again, substantiate and provide evidence for these finds. But then when we go to look for the evidence of them now, today, you can't find them, because a lot of those archaeological discoveries have been confiscated or, omitted from the consciousness record, at least, and thus forgotten largely. And what in its place has happened is that system of white supremacy. I think we just have to call it what it is, frankly. I mean, we can call it academic manipulation if we want to, but I think really at this point in the conversation, it's timely that we're having it now, and I think it's important to call things what they are now, to neutralize any delay, to just get beyond the time loop that we found ourselves in. We're sort of in this interesting biphase, I feel, to where, and I think you speak about this also as it relates to the Matrix movie, for example, at a certain point we hit a wall, and everything since then is just a repetition. There's nothing new specifically among the culture, pop culture, we'll say, just broadly the culture, the modern culture, the pop culture. And in light of that, a lot is lost.
Exactly.
Whereas there are timelines like the one you've been on, where that's been a timeline of recovery, of deep research, and again, weaving the thread, the story, really making the fuller picture of what has been lost, what has been ignored or denied. And I think we find ourselves at such a unique moment. I mean, obviously in the 3D, our podcast is really about putting a fourth dimensional view onto third dimensional human affairs. I think it no coincidence that today is also the 27th episode. And we know that's a factor breaks down 9 times 3, 999, 9 ether, for example, in the frequency. So here we're talking about, actually, as has been the conversation with those of us who know since the 60s, if not before, it's been the conversation about calling it out for what it is, systemically. And I think what's interesting is we're at such a high fever pitch of that as yet reconciled system of white supremacy that's now busting at the seams in a variety of ways. Like, I don't want to glaze over the situation, because even here, obviously today, the past several days, people by the millions have been decrying what they're experiencing in terms of their relationship with the current U.S. administration, for example. And I think it's, I think there's a cause to do so, particularly in the face of egregious violence and the ongoing genocide that we do see. We can't deny that either. That's happening. It's hurting and affecting real people's lives. But in light of that, what I'm suggesting is that part of the issue that brings us to this point is living in a culture of abject denial. In other words, denying the primacy, the primordial origin, as Ruben was kind of highlighting in our intro, just today being in this phase of window we're in relating to the red dragon energy, the primordial mother energy. You doing the work you're doing, bringing it forward in the ways you're bringing it forward, and here in this place now, bringing it forward to a new and different audience, even from folks who've ever even heard to one degree or another what you're really talking about.
Right.
I think even what, as it relates to the focus of this podcast too, it's just very, very pertinent. And we're in that phase shift and we're in that systems change. But let's talk a little bit more though, in terms of your own experience as it relates to, how from the 90s, as you got clarity in relationship to identifying the heritage and the orientation with that, how did that inform you in terms of your strategy or your next moves? I know a lot of this has also been expressed because you're a creative artist. We had a chance to hear some of your music at the top. I want to bring something in a little bit. But I know you're an artist, but you're also a scholar. You're